Hey, I'm Timothy. Today's video looks at stupid people who decided that a single photo was worth risking everything. From a man's annoying attempt to snap a selfie with a total stranger, unaware of his concealed carry, to a teen who climbed into a shopping cart to film a selfie down a steep hill, flying his way straight to a Darwin Award. It was August 17, 2016, on a mixed-use block in Detroit, where a man walking home from his shift would make a request so unnecessary that the security footage would later feel less like a crime and more like a slow-moving error you couldn't stop watching. Darren James Spears was 28 years old and worked as a forklift operator at a regional warehouse, a job that required precision and left him with sore shoulders by the end of every afternoon shift. He lived alone in a studio apartment above a check-cashing storefront, and probably just like most of us, he spent most evenings scrolling through social media, trying to assemble an online persona that felt better than his actual life. Friends described him as quiet, reliable, someone who showed up to cookouts with potato salad and left early. I personally think Darren had confused the internet's appetite for menace with actual human interaction, and that confusion cost him everything he had. He had been walking the same route home for 3 years. That evening, he spotted a man in a worn leather jacket and heavy boots, leaning against the metal grate of a closed pawn shop. Now the speculation surrounding the incident is that Darren likely saw a photo opportunity, something gritty, something that would make his profile look like he moved through spaces where people didn't apologize. He approached the stranger. The man refused. Darren stepped closer anyway, phone already raised, framing the shot with the selfie camera. When the man turned his face away, Darren reached out and briefly grabbed the sleeve of the leather jacket, laughing and telling him it would only take a second. I think most people would have stopped after the first refusal. But Darren had already committed to the version of himself that didn't back down. The block was otherwise empty. A hot dog vendor was packing up about 200 feet south. Two pedestrians stood outside a check-cashing store, sharing a cigarette and watching. Storefront CCTV captured the entire exchange at a low angle. Darren smiled nervously, still trying to position his arm for the shot, phone extended, the stranger's face half obscured by shadow. The footage was grainy in the fading light, but investigators later said Darren appeared to keep talking as he moved closer. The man shifted his weight. His right hand went to his waistband. Darren either didn't notice or didn't process it in time. The man pulled a semi-automatic handgun. The CCTV footage showed the barrel rise in a quick upward motion. One pedestrian later told investigators they heard a single word, "leave," before the shot. The sound was flat and hard, like a metal door slammed against concrete. Darren's phone flew from his hand. He collapsed onto the sidewalk without a sound, his body folding sideways, his leg twisting awkwardly beneath him as he hit the concrete. The man ran east. The two pedestrians froze for a few seconds before one pulled out a phone. Darren was still alive when paramedics reached him, but barely. He died en route to the regional medical center. The coroner's report, in plain terms, described a single gunshot wound to the upper left chest, perforation of the heart, and massive internal hemorrhage. Death was determined to be rapid but not instantaneous. Consciousness likely lost within 10 to 15 seconds. The shooter was arrested 2 blocks away, still wearing the same jacket. Officers responding to the shooting were already patrolling less than a mile away on an unrelated disturbance call when witnesses pointed them toward the suspect's direction of travel. Police records later confirmed prior violent charges. Darren's family had his social media accounts deactivated within the week. No public statement was ever issued. Crucify me for this, but I think the tragedy here isn't the gun. It's that Darren walked past dozens of people every day without incident, and the one person he chose to approach was the one person he should have left alone. Some doors don't need to be opened for a selfie. Most doors, actually. Now, the next fatal selfie features one of the most domesticated animals and another relentless dude. It was September 3rd, 2017, in a second-floor apartment in Osaka's Tennoji ward. What happened on the narrow stairwell landing that evening didn't begin with violence, but with a cat's face and a young man who refused to hear a single no. Hiro Tanaka was 22, a part-time worker at a neighborhood cafe where he handled the morning pastry shift. Co-workers described him as eager to please but impatient, the kind of person who cut corners and called it efficiency. He had no documented conflicts, but a habit of pushing small boundaries. His goal that evening was simple: get a funny photo for his social media feed. He had come to his friend's apartment to hang out, and the rescue cat, a blocky, flat-faced animal with a permanently furrowed brow, looked like a viral moment waiting to happen. I think the warning signs were there for anyone who wanted to see them. You have to understand that this specific pet is a rescue. The cat had arrived at the apartment only 3 weeks earlier, still hiding under furniture whenever someone moved too fast. The friend explicitly told Hiro not to approach the animal, but Hiro figured one quick photo wouldn't hurt. That kind of thinking, the belief that consequences apply to other people, is what makes these stories feel inevitable. That evening, the cat had wedged itself under a wooden chair near the kitchen, watching. Then a delivery arrived, a cardboard box at the front door. The friend went to sign for it, distracted for less than 2 minutes. That was the opening. The security camera, mounted in the hallway corner, recorded what followed. Hiro rose from the couch and walked toward the cat. The cat flattened its ears and lowered its body, retreating backward toward the stairwell. Hiro followed. The cat climbed up the stairs and stopped, its posture stiff. Hiro reached down. A cat person will see all the signs and would probably leave it alone. There's so many times the cat tried to communicate discomfort as Hiro forced the interaction. I don't think Hiro is appreciative of cats. He's just doing it for the likes. The footage shows the animal's head turned toward the upper landing. It wanted to run, but Hiro's hand closed around its midsection first. He lifted the cat to chest height, phone in his other hand, thumb already opening the camera app for his selfie. The cat struggled, hind legs kicking, claws catching fabric. Then it raked his right cheek hard and twisted free. Hiro flinched backward, his left heel missing the landing edge by inches. The phone flew from his hand and clattered down the steps. His right arm swung out for the wall, but found nothing. He fell sideways, his temple catching the concrete edge of the second step with a sound the friend later described as a thick, deadened knock, like a hammer wrapped in a towel. His body tumbled once, twice, and came to rest at the bottom landing. Limbs splayed. The cat scrambled up the stairs and out of frame. The friend heard the impact from the front doorway, the initial crack, then the slower thud of a body rolling. He called out Hiro's name. No answer. He ran to the stairwell and found Hiro face down on the concrete, a dark pool spreading beneath his temple. He called emergency services immediately. Responders arrived and Hiro was unconscious, breathing in short, irregular gasps. He was transported to a regional hospital, but never regained consciousness. The coroner's findings, in plain terms, listed cause of death as acute subdural hematoma from blunt force head trauma, bleeding between the skull and brain following impact with a concrete stair edge. The cat was unharmed. A veterinarian later documented stress-related avoidance behavior consistent with recent relocation: hiding, flattened posture, retreat from approach. The friend, unable to keep the animal after what happened, returned it to the pound within a week. I don't blame the cat. Animals communicate discomfort clearly. Lowered bodies, pinned ears, retreat. Hiro chose to ignore all of it. I think that's not a tragedy of bad luck. It's a tragedy of someone who decided a photo was worth more than a living creature's boundaries. And now the cat, through no fault of its own, has lost its second home. Heads up. Brace yourself because the next selfie attempt is arguably stupid, but just everything else around it is heartbreaking. It was October 23, 2015, in a 24-hour supermarket on the northern edge of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Have you ever done something small and routine that you didn't know would be your last? A woman climbed a shelf to make her son smile, and the building held its breath. Luana Ribeiro, 24, worked the evening cashier shift 6 nights a week. She had given birth at 18 and raised the boy alone since, living in a small apartment a 15-minute bus ride from the store. Co-workers said that she often rushed home to make dinner. That night, after her shift ended at 11 p.m., she stayed inside. Her son, home with a babysitter, had asked via text message for help picking cereal. Luana decided to take a picture of the entire cereal section from above, and judging from their relationship, she likely did it to make him laugh. She probably knew a stepladder existed in the back maintenance aisle, but she didn't go for it. I mean, we've all been there, skipping steps to get to the end faster. Now it's dumb and stupid, but for a parent, they've probably done something a little reckless to make their child smile. Unfortunately, most don't pay for it like this. The gondola shelving unit she climbed was not weight-rated for climbing. It was part of an older system with missing stabilizer brackets along one side after recent maintenance work, bolted into a concrete floor that had settled unevenly over years of use. A forklift had reportedly clipped the lower base several weeks earlier, leaving the frame slightly misaligned. The supermarket at that hour was quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating empty aisles and the occasional stock boy restocking chips. The cereal aisle stretched nearly 100 feet, boxes stacked in neat rows. Luana placed her phone on a nearby shelf, angled it upward, then stepped onto the bottom metal ledge of the unit. She pulled herself to the second shelf, then the third. The shelf held discount canned food displays on the lower rows near the aisle entrance, moving to lighter cereal boxes above. She shifted her weight to adjust the phone angle, reaching one hand higher. And then, the shelving unit began to tilt. Not fast, a slow forward lean, like something waking up. A can of black beans slid off and hit the floor with a hollow clang. Then another. The entire gondola started to go. Security cameras captured the full collapse from 2 angles. The unit tipped forward in what investigators later measured as approximately 3 seconds. Stacked canned goods rained down first. Tomato paste, corn, peas, with several cans visibly striking the floor around her as she tried to climb back down. Then the cereal boxes, lighter but many. She tried to step back, but her foot caught on a metal bracket. The shelving unit came down on top of her, pinning her diagonally across the lower shelves. The falling frame struck the neighboring unit hard enough to partially dislodge several connected sections, sending additional products spilling into the aisle. Fire rescue arrived, called in by one of the clerks. They used hydraulic spreaders to lift the shelving, which gives you an idea how heavy these things are. Luana was out cold when they pulled her out. She was transported to a regional hospital where her son was allowed to visit her. She never woke up. The coroner's report, in plain terms, described death from blunt force trauma to the chest and abdomen from falling stock, combined with crush-related complications after prolonged compression that caused severe internal bleeding and organ failure. She died the following morning. It wasn't an immediate death. A slow one, enough for his son to watch her die. Her son was 7 years old. The supermarket paid for the funeral. Her co-workers organized a meal train for the boy and his grandmother, who took custody. Municipal labor inspectors later examined the damaged shelving system and reviewed prior maintenance records from the store. The stepladder remained in the back aisle, exactly where it had been. We can all look at the footage and see how stupid this accident is, but I can't stop thinking about how she was just trying to be a good mom after a long shift. Being a single mother is hard enough without a cereal shelf taking you out of the picture. That shouldn't have been the last thing she did for his son. I know you probably came here for a laugh or satisfaction, but Luana's story is a bummer. Let me make it up to you on the next one. It was October 13th, 2018, on a friend's ranch in rural Alberta. Picture this: a quiet afternoon, a borrowed horse, and a man who just wanted to look interesting on dating apps. Now ask yourself what you'd give to have those 30 seconds back if you were him. Some doors close faster than you can blink. 31-year-old Kevin Laurent was single for 3 years after a relationship that fizzled without drama. According to friends, he spent his evenings cycling through 3 dating apps, swiping left and right in a rented apartment that stayed too tidy. I think loneliness is a quiet thing. It doesn't announce itself. It just hollows out the spaces between shifts. He had driven 2 hours to visit a friend from work, hoping to get some fresh air and, more urgently, fresh photos for his profile, which he explicitly told the friend. A few shots with a rustic backdrop, maybe a horse in the frame, to signal adventure and down-to-earth charm. I get it. His friend had warned him before he arrived. Stay clear of the hindquarters. Horses startle easy back there. Kevin nodded, acknowledged the advice, and then set it aside. He reasoned that a quick selfie, 30 seconds at most, couldn't possibly go wrong. He had seen similar photos online. People leaning against barns, patting muzzles, looking effortlessly rural. He did not understand that a horse's blind spot extends directly behind its tail, or that a human approaching from that angle with a phone raised could trigger a defensive, startled response rather than recognition. Additionally, and probably most importantly, I don't get why he's so into the horse's backside. Wouldn't most people want to have the face of the horse in a selfie? Anyway, Kevin's friend had stepped inside the stable to fetch a halter, leaving Kevin alone in the yard for less than a minute. That was all the time the situation needed. Based on what investigators pieced up, Kevin walked behind the horse, phone already in his hand, camera app open. He turned his back to the animal, extended his arm, and angled the phone for a rear-facing shot that would capture the horse's hindquarters. He did not know that the horse had stopped swishing its tail, and he definitely did not see the animal tense near the hips and shoulders. The friend stepped out in time to see Kevin airborne for a split second, his torso folding awkwardly as he was thrown backward from a horse's kick. The horse's hind leg had snapped outward in a fast kick, hoof connecting just below Kevin's left collarbone. The force drove him backward several feet into the fence line before his head struck a wooden fence post. A dull crack, then a second impact as the back of his skull hit the hard-packed ground. His body went limp before it stopped moving. I think the worst part is how fast it happens. 1 second you're framing a shot, the next your life is effectively over before you understand what happened. The friend ran. He later described Kevin's face as slack, eyes half open, a thin line of blood running from one ear. No chest rise that he could see. He called emergency services from his truck. The dispatcher sent ground EMS immediately, but the nearest hospital was 45 minutes away by road. An air ambulance was scrambled from Calgary. It landed in the pasture 18 minutes after the call. Paramedics worked on Kevin at the scene, then loaded him. He was pronounced dead at the Regional Trauma Center 2 hours later. The coroner's report, in plain terms, described catastrophic blunt force trauma to the upper chest, including multiple rib and sternal fractures with traumatic injury to the heart and major vessels, combined with a comminuted fracture of the occipital skull and severe traumatic brain injury. Kevin's funeral drew 14 people: his parents, a sister, a handful of co-workers, and the friend who watched it happen. No obituary ran beyond the local paper's brief notice. Look, I don't blame anyone for wanting to be loved. Desperation for connection makes people do unwise things. But next time you think to take a selfie with the horse, just go with its face, because some kicks don't give a second chance. But the same drive that made Kevin ignore warnings would claim another life thousands of miles away, where a young woman's harmless holiday selfie turned deadly. It was December 15, 2013, in a suburb outside Columbus, where a porch light still strung with last year's Christmas decorations would become the last thing a 19-year-old saw before the concrete came up to meet her. Melissa Montemayor worked the register at a department store in a strip mall, the kind of job where she stood for 8 hours folding clearance sweaters and answering the same 4 questions. Friends from the store knew her as the one who showed up to the holiday party with peppermint bark and a spreadsheet of themed social media posts she wanted to shoot. That night, at a small house party in a split-level rental, she wanted to get one good selfie with the porch lights before the freezing drizzle moved in. The lights had been up since 2 previous Christmases, stored loose in a cardboard box in the garage. They worked when plugged in, casting a warm yellow glow across the railing. Melissa had done this before, wrapped lights around her neck for a photo, no different from a scarf. Her friends watched from the doorway, laughing. One pulled out a phone to film the setup. Another leaned against the doorframe holding a drink. Nobody checked the wire. The porch was narrow, maybe 6 feet across, with a metal railing painted white and chipping near the base. A security camera mounted above the doorframe recorded the entire thing at an angle. The night was cold, damp, with frost settling on the concrete steps. Melissa adjusted the lights around her collar, stepped toward the railing, and braced one hand against the metal to lean into a pose. I think about how many times I've grabbed a frayed phone charger and thought nothing of it. These lights had been stepped on, coiled wrong, dragged across concrete. Nobody looks at Christmas lights for damage. They just plug them in and expect them to work. The insulation near the plug had worn through, exposing 2 small sections of copper. When Melissa shifted her weight, the bare wire touched the metal railing, causing a brief arc against the damp metal. The circuit completed through her body for less than a second, just long enough for her to jerk backward involuntarily. The household breaker tripped a moment later as the damaged section of wire continued sparking against the railing. The porch went dark. One of her friends later told investigators it sounded like a sharp snap, followed by Melissa saying something short and startled, not even a word, just a noise. She lost her footing on the frost-slick concrete. Her left foot slipped off the edge of the porch step. Her right hand reached toward the railing but failed to get a grip before she lost balance completely. She fell sideways, turning slightly as she dropped, and the back of her head hit the edge of the bottom step first. The rest of her body followed onto the flat concrete pad below. The friend who had been filming dropped the phone and ran to her. Another called 911 immediately. The security camera footage showed the entire fall. Just over 1 second from the moment she jerked backward to the moment her head contacted the concrete. A third guest, who had training as a nursing assistant, checked for a pulse and found one, weak but present. She told the 911 operator Melissa was breathing but unresponsive. Paramedics arrived 7 minutes later. She was transported to a regional medical center where a CT scan revealed a significant epidural hematoma with associated skull fracture. Surgeons operated, but the bleed had progressed rapidly. She died hours later. The coroner later described the cause of death as blunt force head trauma from an accidental fall, with an electrical equipment malfunction identified as a contributing factor to the loss of balance. The house party ended immediately. The security footage was turned over to police and never released publicly. The friend who had been filming deleted the clip unprompted and told investigators she never wanted to see it again. Melissa's family requested no media coverage. I think the most honest thing I can say is that nobody in that doorway thought they were watching someone die. They thought they were watching a girl take a picture. And I think that's the part that follows them now. Not the fall, but the ordinary second before it, when everything still seemed fine. Now, the last story annoyed me because it feels like this type of scenario is so obviously stupid, so blatantly dumb, but so many people keep doing it and keep dying over it. It was March 29th, 2017, on a steep residential hill in Sheffield, UK, where a shopping cart became a missile and a phone camera recorded the last clear moment of a teenager who thought speed was content. By the time the cart stopped, Liam Patel had already lost one of his sneakers during the fall. Liam Patel was 16, a Year 11 student known among his friends as the one who would try anything once. He had posted skateboard falls, stair jumps, and near misses across his social media for months. That Saturday afternoon, he and 3 friends found an abandoned shopping cart near a corner shop and decided to drag it to the steepest hill in the neighborhood. He was to stand inside the cart, film a fast ride selfie holding his phone outward, and post the video before dinner. I think a lot of teenagers have stood at the top of a hill with a dumb idea and called it fun. The problem isn't the idea. It's the absence of anyone old enough to say what happens when the curb wins. Before you judge his parents, Priya and Mark Patel, for neglect, it's worth noting that they were both senior nurses at a hospital, likely saving lives. They had spent Liam's entire adolescence exhausted, not neglectful, but absent in the way that financial necessity demands. Neither of them knew he had even left the house that afternoon. Liam had said he was going to a friend's to study. The hill dropped at roughly 20 degrees for about 300 feet. Narrow pavement bordered both sides, and metal signposts marked driveways at irregular intervals. The friends positioned the cart at the crest. Liam stepped inside, both feet planted, phone extended in his right hand, already recording the selfie. One friend started recording from the sidewalk. Another counted down. The cart began to roll. Initial speed was slow enough for laughter. Liam held his arms out, phone still filming. The cart picked up pace around the halfway point. The wheels started to wobble. One friend shouted something unintelligible. The cart drifted toward the left curb. Liam tried to shift his weight, but his stance inside the cart offered no leverage. The front wheel caught a raised curb. A driveway apron misaligned with the road surface by about 2 inches, causing a sudden deceleration and partial tip rather than a clean stop. The cart did not cleanly launch him forward. Instead, it rotated sharply and partially tipped, throwing him off balance. His chest and face struck a metal signpost at approximately 10 to 12 miles per hour after the initial slowdown and rotation. The impact produced a flat, hard smack. Liam's body folded around the post before he fell backward onto the pavement. The back of his head hit the asphalt a second time. The cart clattered to a stop 10 feet downhill. The friend filming dropped the phone, but the recording continued. One friend called emergency services immediately. The operator heard crying in the background. Paramedics arrived approximately 8 minutes later. Liam was unconscious, breathing irregularly. He was transported to the regional hospital. Death was confirmed in the emergency department. The coroner's findings, in plain terms, were a skull fracture at the front of the head from the signpost impact, compounded by a second fracture at the rear from the pavement fall. Severe brain hemorrhage. No helmet. The funeral drew over 200 classmates who stood in a cold drizzle, most of them ironically holding phone cameras. The school issued a general safety warning about dangerous filming trends. Liam's parents released no statement. I genuinely believe that if you show a 16-year-old 100 videos of people surviving stupid things, they will assume they are the 101st. The cart, the hill, the phone. Stupid from the get-go. It was the ordinary math of risk, and Liam Patel ran out of luck before he ran out of hill.